Right. Hi, you guys. Now, I've got a magical thing to do today. So what I want you guys to do is I will listen to music, listen to your favourite show on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, for older people, or younger people. Depends because it varies. Disney Plus, Netflix, or whatever platform you've got. And there's one thing I would like to do is grab a paper, some pens, some colouring pens, or artist. Also, you can get like artist pads or artist books and whatnot, and start drawing. That's when you're talented to see how careful and sort of fast you can draw a picture that's inside your head. So, with that, I'm going to put some one for a minute. So I'm going to put some on. Nice to enjoy. We're going to do that, so I've got something to listen to while we're doing it. Alright, so let's begin.
I go to school in a big city that's one of the least safe cities in the U.S. I chose this school specifically for nursing, and definitely not for the location. I live in a row house, I guess that's what we call it, off campus with 4 other girls. Cheaper and nicer than dorms. Or so we thought. I guess in the end you get what you pay for. We are all girls and sophomores in college. As you would guess, we go out and drink, come back, do things we don't remember. We had just started our rent in August, 3 floors plus a basement, which was padlocked by the owners. Understandable. We would definitely have had parties down there to avoid immediate cleanup. Beside that, though, the house was pretty great. Amazing location to the school and to work as well. I'm a CNA who works odd hours. It was not expensive and was in pretty good condition, too. I had never lived with that many people before, just one roommate. So where I was living before, we definitely knew whenever one of us had misplaced or changed anything. Eventually, in this new place, I started to notice my snacks were either half gone or would be completely missing. I was starting to get really annoyed, but in a house of that many people, it's too much work to try and figure out who ate it specifically, so I just tried to get over it. Slowly, as girls do, we started making comments about someone eating our food, but passive-aggressively, like young college-age girls. We all just let it go, though, because who wants the entire house to get into a big fight? At the time, I worked until about 11 in the NICU. I got home at about 11:30, mostly on weeknights. I started to take notice of pans left out or snack wrappers lying around. I thought it was odd because none of my roommates had done that before, but I just thought maybe they'd drink a bottle of wine and then went to bed. Maybe they just forgot being drunk. Again, though, my roommates all started making their own comments. This time, we started to ask because it was getting really annoying with all of our food being gone and things being left lying around. I knew it had to be one of them, but who wants to admit they ate someone else's snacks in college? Snacks are a high commodity after all. We chalked it up to the girl who always smoked and ate her own weight in food. She swore up and down it was not her, though. This went on for about 2 months. It started to get more obvious that someone was clearly stealing from us. Definitely the girl that always smokes. I see her eat her whole snack pantry in one night. Well, I wish it was her. One night at work, I was about to get off, but a situation happened and I didn't end up leaving until about 12:30 instead. I took the bus home. I carry pepper spray, a taser, and a pocket knife, so don't worry. I got home and just wanted to collapse. I wanted to sneak into bed ASAP. I walked into the front door. The stairs were directly in front of me. I could see down the side into the kitchen. I walked in and saw someone there, but I was way too tired to say hi, thinking it would end in a 30-minute conversation about nothing, so I walked straight upstairs. When I got to the second floor, though, I noticed that all of my roommates' doors were closed, which always meant they were either in their room for the night or fast asleep. I started to get a weird feeling, something that made everything click. They were all asleep, right? I texted our house group chat, asking if anyone was in the kitchen. I felt stupid for even asking this question. 2 responded no, and said the other 2 had been asleep for a while. I knew it wasn't any of my roommates down there at that moment. I dialed 911, but I didn't press call yet. I crept into my roommate's room across the hall. Thankfully, or perhaps not thankfully for her, she didn't have her door locked. I whispered, telling her I thought someone was in the house downstairs. She gave me the widest eyes ever and looked like she was about to burst into tears. She didn't suspect anything like I had, but for reference, this was a very bad area. There was a shooting in the house 2 doors down only weeks earlier by an armed intruder. She mouthed to make the call. The whole time, we were dead silent. We couldn't hear anything at all. I was starting to think maybe I'd just seen things after such a long day at work, and was regretting that I'd dialed, thinking I was going to look like an idiot when they showed up, and I was just overtired and daydreaming. Still, though, we explained to the officers what's going on, and they say they'll send someone ASAP. And that actually did mean right away, since this was a big and dangerous city. The police showed up very fast. I didn't even want to go downstairs to greet them, but the operator confirmed it was them, so I did. The whole time I could swear the operator could hear my heart beating out of my chest. The police come in and start looking around. I'm thinking to myself, oh God, I must look so dumb. They ask if there are any other floors. We tell them technically the basement, but it's always padlocked, so not really, no. They check the basement just in case. And yeah, they were right. A man had been living in the padlocked basement. The lock had been pulled off the hinges and was just kind of propped there against the wall. We'd never looked down there, though. We rarely went out back since it was locked. The guy had taken a comforter from one of my roommates out of the hall closet, a mattress from God knows where, and clothes, too. He was the one moving and eating all our stuff. He would come out in the middle of the night and do it. He had started getting more comfortable lately. I don't know if he was drugged out and forgot to clean his tracks or if he didn't really care anymore. My roommates and I had pretty consistent schedules during the week, probably making him think that any time after 12 was good to come out. We never slept with our individual doors locked, and that's what freaks me out the most. He had access to any one of us at any moment, and we had no idea. When he was getting arrested, I was the only one to go down and look. I don't know why I did. I wish I didn't. I took a picture in the process of him being arrested to show to my roommates, who were all too afraid to go down and meet him. For some questions about all the stuff he had down there. The clothes, some were unexplainable, but the nice button-down shirts he had were from 2 of my roommates' boyfriends that they had complained about mysteriously losing. The basement was also used as extra storage for the owners long ago, so that's why there was a bunch of random things in there. Not everyone has to believe me, but it did happen to me, and it was very scary. In 2014, I moved to England from Canada to gain work and travel experience, and also to find myself. I ended up living in Essex with 3 other roommates. They were all women a bit older than I was. I was 24 at the time. Megan was 31, Cherry was 34, and Cassie was 38. Megan was from New York, Cherry from New Jersey, and Cassie from Poland. All 4 of us shared this 3-story flat. The back of our home was the living room and kitchen. The back wall was complete glass that looked out into the garden. The garden was completely fenced in. The house had an interesting dynamic, to say the least. Tons of stories from that time in my
once you
life.
guys are done,
I
don't
adored
forget
all of my
to
roommates,
send it
except for Cherry.
by
After living with
message
Cherry for 7
on
months, I was
here,
completely
or
over her
send
antics.
it,
One day I come home from work.
send
I lock
it
the
on
door,
here by
make myself
the
something to eat,
comments
and
and
go up to
whatnot.
bed. I brought some work
And
home with me,
that'll be
so
fun.
I'm in my nightie with all these papers around me and my headphones on, jamming out. I had my headphones on because Cherry was out to dinner with work friends. That meant booze, and then soon after that, a tantrum that would surely come. I didn't want to have to listen to her crazy scream crying the whole night. I was working away, completely focused, until I felt something. I look up to see a man standing over me. I didn't register it right away. I passively say, "Cherry's room is on the second floor, you know," and continued to work. Cherry regularly brought strange men home. He didn't leave. Again. "Cherry's room is downstairs, you..." Then he interrupts. "I'm not here for Cherry." A cold chill iced my veins. My fight or flight immediately kicked in. I started surveying the situation. I look him up and down. He has a bottle of Prosecco in one hand and a knife in the other. He's about 5'10". Wild, muddy brown hair and black eyes. He has this light blue polo shirt on, and one side of his collar was popped up. A distinct Manchester accent as well. Once I focused in, I realized his eyes were black because his pupils were completely dilated. Shit, I was in trouble. I needed an escape plan right now. Unfortunately, this man was standing in between me and my bedroom door. I needed to get downstairs, but I needed for him to think it was his idea, so I decided to play along. Just at that exact moment, he uses his knife to pop the cork. I said, "Oh no, let's clean that up. I prefer to drink out of a proper flute anyways." He nodded, replying, "Yeah, you're a proper classy bird. Let's go." I try to act as naturally as possible. I try not to show that I'm shaking all over, and try to gain control over my breathing. We take the long journey down the main floor of my flat. All 3 floors. He has the back of my nightie bunched up in one hand, and I could feel the point of his knife graze my back with his other. I was trying to playfully speak with him as we walked down the stairs. I couldn't tell you what I was saying. I was most likely just rambling. I couldn't hear anything over the beat of my heart in my own ears. We get to the bottom of the stairs. There's a hallway to my left that leads to the front door. On my right, which is much closer to us, the kitchen and the living room. We make our way into the kitchen. I point to the cabinets that had the wine glasses. He said he knew where they were, and started toward them. I now had the kitchen table in between us. It was time to run. I burst into a full sprint down the hallway toward the door. My hands fumble over the locks, shaking and sweating. I swing the door open and see 2 men walking across the street. They must have been walking home from the train, as there was a big train station right in front of our home. I call out to them urgently for help, and suddenly I'm flung onto the ground. Little pebbles piercing my skin send sharp pains where they jab in. The intruder pushed me out of the way to run and escape. One of the men began chasing after the intruder, while the other urged me to go inside while he surveyed my home and called the police. I locked all the doors and called the police myself as well. While I was on the phone with dispatch, I maniacally run around the house to double-check all the windows and doors. Suddenly, I hear a loud bang on my door. I inform the dispatch of the banging, and she informs me police weren't there yet. I thought it might be one of the gentlemen who had stopped to help me. I go look out the eye hole, though, and I see it's him, the intruder. He came back for me. He's banging on my door, screaming that I had his glasses, and that he was not yet done with me. I freak out. The dispatcher attempts to calm me down, but I'm losing my ever-loving mind. She then said, "They're pulling into your street now. You should hear the sirens." I did, thank God. The intruder blasted off. One of the officers even had to jump out of the passenger side while the car was still moving and chase after him. The second officer comes into my home, interviews me and the 2 gentlemen, collects evidence and takes photos. After some time of him being there, Cherry comes home and freaks out. Once the situation was explained to her, she said, Oh my, that could have been me. Yeah, thanks, Cherry. It's all about you. The next morning, I was called in to identify a man they had in custody. I pointed him out. I go into a little room and the officer pulls out an evidence bag. He asked me if the items were mine. They were. There were underwear and photos taken from my home as well. The officer then informed me that apparently this intruder had been stalking me for some time now. He estimated at least 3 months. He had made a nest outside our home on top of a hill that overlooked into our living room and kitchen. He was a known sex offender and drug dealer. He told me how lucky I was to get out practically unharmed. Others had not been so lucky with this guy. To the man who stalked me and broke into my home, let's not meet again. However, I would like to run into those 2 gentlemen that helped me. Every day, I'm very thankful for them.
Okay. Right, I'm supposed to things up a little bit more.
Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight we're going to be heading into the world of cryptids, so be sure to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I was driving from Atlanta to Lexington with my girlfriend to visit my parents. I like to drive at night, since there are less people on the road and I can take my time. It was 3 a.m. and we were making good time. I had stopped at a gas station and picked us up some coffee. We were due in about an hour.
Yep.
My girlfriend was sleeping soundly, and I'm listening to a
Okay,
quiet
guys,
radio
I'm done
humming
after,
away.
anyway.
I start getting a little drowsy and take a sip. Road was just as my coffee. No cars in sight except for a few spotted on the side of the road here and there. In the distance I could make out what looks like a hitchhiker, or what I think is one, but I can't really tell due to poor lighting. As I get closer I start to notice other things, like how this person is kind of thin and tall. For the most part, apparently brown. I'm right up to this thing now. It's about 20 feet away, and it turns and locks eyes with me as I pass by. This was no person, and it's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. It was a deer, or I tell myself it was. I've seen deer stand on their hind legs to fight, but they still have deer posture when they do this. Not only that, but I was watching this thing walk for about 30 seconds from first sighting it in the distance to passing it.
Right.
The posture it had was human. Standard biped stance, arms back, chin down. But the worst part were the eyes, or lack thereof, in their place were 2 large black pits, almost black hole-ish. I'll never forget the stare down it gave me. The instant I passed it, I had the only panic attack I've ever had in my life. I had to wake up my girlfriend to keep calm enough to get to an exit with a large gas station a few miles away. Like hell, I was going off a ramp close to that thing. After we pulled into the station, I had a complete meltdown. I began crying harder than I ever thought I could. I couldn't talk, breathe, or do anything, but I wanted to curl into a ball and cry. After 30 minutes or so, she finally gets me to calm down enough to tell her what happened. While I don't think she believed what I saw, she knew that I was convinced and legitimately scared to death. Every once in a blue moon, I'll dream about it and wake up crying or in a cold sweat. And she'll tease me about it, or roll over and ignore me, instead of comforting me over the one thing I've ever been terrified of. But I know what I saw. I know it will haunt me for the rest of my days. This takes place in April of 2013. Me and a friend had just been to the movies and was just walking around at about 10:45 p.m. when we decided that we should take a shortcut through the schoolyard of our old school, which had since been abandoned. It was in pretty bad shape. As we walked through the schoolyard, we decided to try and get inside the school building to explore a little bit. Now, the school consists of 2 wings, so the building is an L shape if viewed from above. It is 3 stories tall and has 3 entrances. The main entrance leads to a kind of main hall which connects the two wings. Each wing has staircases at each end of the corridors, which lead to the different floors. One of the windows right by the entrance to the lower wing was actually wide open, so we could easily get in. We were now in the basement. We used our cell phones as flashlights and made sure not to point them towards the windows to avoid being seen. Even though the building was not in use, there was still a lot of stuff just left lying around. Musical equipment, uniforms, a pool table, chairs. So we were just exploring each room in the basement to see if we could find anything.
Oh, and one more thing, guys. Once you're done,
we explored for about 15 minutes before we headed up to the first floor. And we were now in the main
name and the last letter of your name.
There was some kind of tarp or large plastic sheet hanging there to separate the hall and the lower wing for some reason. I assume it was for some kind of construction work. We went down one of the corridors and started exploring the classrooms. Every classroom had either been vandalized or suffered some kind of water damage, so everything was very broken or rotting. In hindsight, I think we're lucky the floors didn't collapse on us. We had just come out of the third classroom and were in the corridor when we heard someone moving the tarp and plastic sheeting in the main hall. This was not the wind or anything, and we could definitely tell something was physically moving it. We could also hear footsteps, although the rhythm of the steps was kind of odd. It sounded like someone changed their pace sporadically. We immediately went inside a classroom to hide, as we thought someone had called security on us. We hid behind the door in the classroom for about 2 minutes. We didn't hear anything else during this time, so we figured it had to be the wind or just random noise. We decided to push on. We went through the corridor and up the stairs in the other end of the main hall and explored the second floor. While we were there, we would occasionally hear some noises, but we just brushed it off as wind. After a while, we had explored the rest of the corridor, as we decided to walk down the staircase that led from the second floor to the hall. Halfway down the staircase, there was this plateau before the second set of stairs, and this is where things took a turn. We could see the plastic from there, that it was moving. We also heard some kind of scratching noise, and we stood there for a second just listening, and I decided to peek around the corner to see what was making the sound. What I saw scared the living hell out of me. It was some kind of creature. It was skinny, almost completely naked. I couldn't see any clothes. It had really thin strands of hair and was very pale, like corpse pale, almost completely white. The first thing that came to mind was that it resembled Gollum from Lord of the Rings, just bigger. It was crouching down and was scratching the floor, and it made some growly, groany, breathing noises. It was facing away from us, so I just stood frozen for a good while.
Thanks for watching, guys, and
it took a step back.
See you next time.
And just pointed at this thing and looked at my friend. He peeked